Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist, and the world's friendliest financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. And with us in the studio to continue our trek down this decision fatigue, now we're on part 5, is Mr. Trey Juergens. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for coming up with this topic. Today, we're talking about, boy, this is a biggie, choosing health insurance and Medicare options. Then the next one, we're going to mold all this together, how to plan for long-term care costs. So again, going back to Granddad, as I think out loud, I was only 18 at the time, but his health insurance was totally provided by Bell South. He didn't have any health insurance premiums. Back then, people didn't go to the doctor a lot. I mean, I don't know, they just didn't get sick or they just didn't care, but he didn't go to the doctor a lot. And the next, I hate to say it like this, but that generation back then, they were slow to put people in nursing homes. Now, my grandmother died of a heart attack. My grandfather, did go his last couple of months in the nursing home, but my mom did everything she could to take care of him, moved him in with her. And again, nothing wrong with going in nursing homes, not trying to put anybody on a guilt trip here, but that back in the day, you just didn't do that until it was a last resort. People didn't live as long as they do now. So let's just talk about that a minute. And this huge issue, when people come into retirement, they all either health insurance premiums prior to 65. We're going to be talking about IRMA in the next segment with TJ. This is a huge issue, but just the costs and the fear of healthcare issues.
Yeah, like you said, that retirement is not just choosing a date and where to move your 401k. There are so many health insurance, long-term care insurance decisions, a ripple effect of different decisions. And I hope we don't fatigue everyone too much in just going over and over all these, but this is a really big one where we can provide particular products and advice in some regards. And sometimes we can only really just advise and give some guidance so they can go to someone we may refer them to or another agent that they're already working with in terms of health insurance. But we got to kind of draw a line where we can and where we can't help.
And before we get into that, let's talk about this a minute, because I want to make sure people understand from an advice standpoint. I mean, we've met, I probably need to look at that, or maybe with our new CRM. I don't know how many people I met with in 2024. You met with a lot of people. Here we are in 2025. We meet a ton of people. How many people would you say, Trey, on average, are retiring before 65? And again, this huge issue of how you're going to afford health insurance. What are their options? Let's say somebody retires at 62, and then even they have a spouse that's 58, and they're not going to be working. What are they going to do about health insurance?
Well, it's a huge decision, because if you retire before Medicare, that's going to be one of your biggest.
Medicare is 65.
Correct. So if you retire before Medicare and you say your spouse is still younger than you, that may leave, potentially up to 10 years before you get to Medicare age that you're going to have to bridge that gap. And it may be through the exchange. You may...
What we like to call Obamacare, right? The government subsidies.
Correct. You may lean on COBRA, and that may give you 18 months, which is going to be very expensive. Sometimes it's the best option if you are only, say, a year away from 65, if you want to keep the same doctors. And if you don't want to go shop the exchange, that COBRA may be your best option.
And also, too, just the pure cost. And sometimes people will come in, and I feel for them. They're like, what is this probably going to run? And I'll guesstimate. I'll say, well, let's just, on the safe side, say it's going to be $1,000 to $1,500 a month for health insurance premiums. They're like, oh, my gosh, I was only paying $400 with my employer. Where am I going to get that money? Speak to the game plan, again, to help people make even decisions on how we're going to cash flow the health insurance. Let's say they do run into a $1,500 a month premium.
Yeah, we may set money aside specifically for that. We may have a plan to utilize some already taxed assets that cash in the bank, something that's going to keep their modified adjusted gross income down for the purposes of the healthcare exchange. If it doesn't look on paper that they're making that much money, but they're getting by and they're living comfortably, we can keep their health insurance premiums down.
And it's funny, the things we run into, I guess that's why I still love this business at age 65, all the different avenues and things we can think about. Had somebody in just the other day. I think they were in the 62-year range. I think they're both around 62 if I remember. Anyway, we got this health insurance issue to come up with. They know they're going to have the subsidy, et cetera. Fortunately, they had some Roth, some after-tax money, and I assured them, I said, look, with this after-tax money, we can parlay this out. We can keep your gross income down and keep those subsidies going. So speak again about if somebody's younger, why when you're approaching retirement, it's nice to have this after-tax money. Give an example of just that.
That's exactly right. If you tax diversify yourself prior to retirement, you have options. You're flexible in terms of planning like this. It gives us ability to step in and show our worth by, hey, we're going to be able to do this until 65. You're going to be using this asset, and this asset. We're going to wait on any of these pre-tax IRAs because that would throw you up into higher premiums. It just helps us help you. But if you retire and all you've got is that 401k and you're going out prior to 65, there's potential you're going to be paying some big monthly premiums.
But again, if you're several years away from retirement, and I know you're proud of that 401k and everything, but there are times when you need to back off that puppy. And in the next segment, when I get TJ on, we're going to talk about a gentleman. We had a long conversation with one of our current clients, how much money he has in the 401k. And now that he's into this Social Security age, Medicare age, he's into IRMA issues. It's a big issue. So again, the warning shot over the bow. If all you've got is a bunch of pre-tax money in a 401k and you're still a few years away from retirement, personally, I would work on getting that after-tax built up. Again, folks, Tony Walker Financial, we're a full-time financial planning firm, retirement planning firm. Some of the things we do sell. We get a commission on these products. Some of the things we offer advice on, we do not charge for any of our advice. We don't get paid, and some we do both. So let's just start at the top. What is a well-being rider? Obviously, we sell a lot of annuities here, but talk to that and why that would have anything to do with long-term care.
Yeah, with that long-term care concern, true long-term care insurance, which we'll talk about, has gotten really, really hard to get. And what we are able to sell are hybrid products, whether it's an annuity or life insurance. Some of these have long-term care benefits, like accelerated death benefits or well-being riders that will allow you an increased amount that they're going to pay out to help offset those long-term care costs.
So it's not really long-term care insurance, but it certainly could help. And some of them even pay for home health care as well and will increase that mailbox money.
That's correct.
The next one is life insurance. Of course, I cut my teeth on life insurance. I love life insurance, but I like permanent life insurance. What has the industry done to try to help people who might have life insurance, but in the past you couldn't use it until you died? Tell us about the new types of life insurance available to help with long-term care.
Right. It's another hybrid product. So life insurance that has these long-term care provisions allows you to access that death benefit while still living to provide as kind of a buffer to your other assets. So instead of spending down all your other assets and, as everyone says, being afraid that the nursing home is going to take everything, this life insurance, you don't have to wait until you die to use it. It allows you to kind of accelerate that death benefit to offset those costs.
Okay, you mentioned long-term care insurance, probably the best insurance you can buy, but talk about trying to apply for it and insurability issues plus the darn cost. And as we say, it's a use it or lose it. What's the problem with long-term care insurance?
Yeah, so as they say, the Cadillac plan, if you were to go into a long-term care need, having long-term care insurance is the best option. However, 10 years ago, there were dozens and dozens of insurance providers providing these policies. Now there's about 8 to 10. And it's really hard to get. If you're female, it's going to be more expensive. They just anticipate you're going to live longer. They're willing to just deny coverage on people for small things like joint replacement and osteoporosis, things like that. So it's very, very hard to get. It is a use it or lose it, meaning if you may pay and pay and pay on this insurance in hopes to never use it. And if you don't, poof, there goes all those premiums.
Yeah. Let's go down to Medicare supplements. What is a Medicare supplement basically, and how are we involved in that decision?
Yeah, so when you reach Medicare age, Medicare A and B, that's original Medicare provided by the government. Beyond that are the supplement or advantage plans. That's kind of everything else. The supplements are usually we recommend something like a Plan G. It's the most comprehensive available now. Some folks have the old Plan F that's gone the way of the dinosaur. Advantage plans kind of wrap everything, A, B, and C, your prescription drugs, gym memberships. A lot of the times we've heard some horror stories with those in terms of the way that they compensate hospitals. They may try to get you out of there a little quicker than maybe you need to. And then the prescription drug plans would go kind of with that Medicare supplement.
Well, that Susan was in the hospital recently. That gets you out of there earlier than you planned to. She would have loved to have heard that. We couldn't get her out of there. We'll talk about this in the next segment, but IRMAA, I had to always remind myself, the acronym Income Related Monthly Adjusted Amount. This is a huge issue, folks, when you get into Medicare age 65 beyond. We'll talk about that in the next segment. Health insurance. We don't do health insurance. How do we sometimes advise, though, on health insurance?
Yeah, like you mentioned, anything that falls below this Medicare things, we can just kind of give you some guidance and some advice on. IRMAA, I know TJ will touch on. Health insurance before 65, we don't do, but we can steer you in the direction of advisors that do that. We can kind of point you to the direction of the healthcare exchange, whether it's Connect in Kentucky or healthcare.gov in Indiana. It's a conversation we can have. We can't directly get hands-on with it, but we can certainly give you some advice.
Well, and also from the advice standpoint, from back to the cash flow, we can certainly help with that. So if you're working with a health insurance agent that understands that world, and they could communicate with us, hey, we got to watch income of taxable income. We're happy to help with that at no charge. Next is Social Security. Gosh, we give a lot of advice on this. Obviously, we don't sell Social Security, but in what ways do we advise on Social Security?
Yeah, anytime we lay out a game plan, we're putting a recommended age of starting Social Security. That doesn't mean you have to do it that time, but when we lay it out, we're using those other assets to supplement around it. And if it's a spousal election question or survivor benefit election, Lisa in our office could really hone in on any question you might have in terms of Social Security.
Trust planning documents, as you know, I've been in the estate planning world was really my world back in the 80s and 90s. I remember even in Bowling Green, I was the president of the estate planning council, but I loved all that stuff. But let's make a distinction, because we do provide a lot of general advice on trusts and things like that, but why can we not legally really give advice?
Yeah, as you say, we don't look good in orange. We're not going to draft trust documents. We can't draft a POA. We can help you align these documents with these estate plans we help lay out, and we can work hand in hand with the attorney that you're working with for these things, but we can't write these documents, and we're not going to override your attorney on providing advice on these documents.
And I was going to say too, a lot of attorneys that get into this, when they see our game plans, it really helps them, because it reminds them, hey, a lot of these assets won't even go through probate, a lot of assets through beneficiary. You sure you want to do that? So I think the attorneys that work in this area, they appreciate what we're trying to do. We just want to make sure they have all the information before they draft the documents. So
a quick thing about that, with trusts and POAs and these documents that attorneys want you to go through the exercise of finding all the assets and putting all this together. We had a client come in and they said, I handed this binder to my attorney, and they were just befuddled that all this was laid out, all this was organized. And it was kudos to you for putting this process together, that most of advisors are not helping collect all these documents and putting everything in this binder. So this attorney, we kind of probably did some of their job for them, but it really made it easy.
That's awesome. And then finally, this is a big thing, durable power of attorneys. Why is this such an important document? Most people don't have those. And then why do we need that on file?
Yeah, so working with senior demographic, baby boomers, we know a lot of our clients are going to get to an age where they may decline cognitively. We have trusted contacts on file that allow us to reach out and track folks down, or maybe express concern if we do notice some decline. That doesn't allow us to work directly with that trusted contact. If a power of attorney, especially durable power of attorney, is on file, we can place documents with each of the companies they have business with. So if something does happen, if someone has a stroke and can't communicate, and let us know how to change beneficiaries, address, distribution amounts, that POA could step in and we could work seamlessly with them.
Folks, we'll be right back. When I come back, one of our tax-certified people, Trey Juergens, he likes to go by Timmy.
Is your name Timmy?
No, my name's not Timmy. I don't like being called Timmy. I've never been called Timmy.
Trey Juergens will be on, and we're going to talk about that IRMA issue. This is some of the most interesting stuff you're going to learn, and wondering where in the world politicians come up with this stuff. Good stuff. We'll be right back.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
Worry-Free Music presents the greatest collection of Christmas covers ever assembled.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Hey!
Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas. 486 timeless classics across 6 digitally remastered 8-track tapes.
Happy holidays!
Every song fills your home with holiday magic.
Sing ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, dong ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding.
Don't miss this opportunity to receive Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas, the perfect way to celebrate the joy of this holiday season.
Dashing through the snow, hey, and one horse open sleigh, yeah.
Only $685 plus $3 shipping and handling. Order yours today.
8-track tape player not included. Offer void where prohibited.
And from all of us at Tony Walker Financial, have a Merry Christmas.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. In our time remaining before we get into our Bob Russell interview, which will follow this segment, I wanted to talk about something very, very complicated, thanks to our politicians in Washington, and we'll be covering this. We call it IRMA, which stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjusted Amount. I always have to look at that. I forget the acronym. But what in the heck is IRMA? Well, basically, IRMA deals with your Medicare premiums, Part B and Part D. You see, many of you with these huge tax-infested 401ks and IRAs that you were told to max out all of these years didn't realize the rippling effect of when you go to take money out. And boy, has it affected this IRMA situation. In other words, taxable income that hits your tax return will affect your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums. And it can be a huge amount of money that you're going to have to pay as far as extra money for the Part B and Part D premiums. To help us understand the whole complexity of IRMA, how we at Tony Walker Financial try to assist our clients in keeping those premiums down, but at the same time, trying to deal with that darn tax tumor. With us via Zoom from our Bowling Green office is our very own tax-certified specialist in the Bowling Green office, Mr. Trey Juergens. Good morning, TJ.
Morning, Tony.
Well, I appreciate you being on. Now, I've already kind of defined IRMA. Give us an example of how IRMA premiums are calculated with other income. How do they go about even determining whether you're going to pay more in IRMA?
Sure. So IRMA is calculated using what's called your modified adjusted gross. But what that means is income from all sources, whether it's tax-exempt interest, any dividends, and also the full amount of your Social Security, not just the taxable portion.
So, yeah, I think a lot of people think there's deductions and everything else. So anything coming on that tax return has to be included in the IRMA calculations, correct?
That's correct.
That's pretty hefty. Okay, so in our time remaining, let's use an example. We had a gentleman in the other day, we changed the names to protect the innocent, but had a pretty large 401k that he rolled over to us. He's in his late 60s, and he's dealing with IRMA because he has a pension, he's got Social Security, and we're trying to encourage him to take more out of this IRA to deal with the tax tumor. But what was his whole dilemma when it came to IRMA?
He was scared to death about it, quite honestly, and really concerned about how it's going to affect him. The first step up in IRMA is about $85. Now, that's just Part B. Part D is another $15. So he was looking at an additional $100 a month. IRMA's a little less forgiving than tax brackets. Tax brackets, everything's just, if you go $1 over, that next dollar is just taxed at the current tax rate. But if you go $1 over in IRMA, your whole Medicare policy premium goes up by that $85 a month.
And what was your reaction? I know you're sitting in more and more meetings. Of course, obviously, you talk on the phone with many of our clients, whether it's RMDs, all the tax planning services we offer for free. But and you're working towards that role. We're trying to get you to a point where you can legally give advice, and I'm looking forward to that day because you're doing a great job. But What was your impression as you really sat there, you put yourself in the shoes of this client who's worked hard all their life, told to save in all these 401ks, and here they are at 68, and it's almost like they're hogtied because of this other governmental rule from pulling out money to enjoy?
Yeah, you could really see that there was a lot of concern on their face and really didn't want to cross that threshold if there was any way to possibly to do it. And so we started talking about QCDs and that kind of thing that would be available to them that doesn't count towards IRMA, gets the money out of the 401k, works better for you than just writing a check to a church or a different charity, because it comes straight out of the IRA and isn't taxable to you.
You're talking about the qualified charitable distributions, of course, as an option.
Right.
Well, TJ, we appreciate everything you do. You and Leanne Tinsley are their certified tax person, and you make it a good day, and you keep taking care of all those clients.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome. So, folks, if you have questions about your IRMA, Medicare premiums, tax tumor, give us a call anytime at 877-499-9255 or log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. We'll be right back with retired pastor and the founder of Bob Russell Ministries, Mr. Bob Russell. Stay tuned. Don't let the fear of running out of money in retirement keep you up at night. Turn your 401k into mailbox money for life by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255.
The individuals in this interview are uncompensated clients at the time of filming. Their opinions expressed were provided to Worry Free Productions for use as an advertisement by Tony Walker Financial. Please refer to Form CRS and Form ADV Part 2B Disclosure Brochure for information regarding the advisory services offered by Tony Walker Financial.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Simeon and Debbie Ambergy. We always like to start off. Tell us a little bit about what you did for a living. We'll start with you, Debbie.
I've always worked like in clerical or secretary and, that type of work, and currently still do some of that. So it's
kind of working part-time.
Yes.
And Simeon?
For the past 20 years, I was working with Larno Harris, and he is a 5-time Grammy Award, 11 Dove Award winning gospel artist, just probably one of the best Christian vocalists around. That transitioned me to seeking more production work, and especially like I started doing a lot of YouTube, and it really helped me to get into the technical aspects of music production and things.
What in the world prompted you to contact Tony Walker Financial? Debbie, do you remember much about that first contact?
We were just praying about what to do with our finances. And I just kept catching your program on the air, and I was just so impressed about how you use scripture. And I kept telling Simeon about it. That was the first encounter, yeah.
So I started watching too, and it was like, yeah, we need to do that.
And since that time, you've been with us several years now. How would you, Simeon, explain the experience here, and particularly working with the staff and the details that go into your plan?
Well, and Debbie will agree with me. It's just there's peace. There's peace and confidence. So you walk in the door and you just instantly feel a sense of this is where we're supposed to be.
Well, we appreciate you all so much and appreciate your business.
Thanks for having us, Tony.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looking for an advisor you can trust? Schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 1-877-499-9255.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. We're enjoying so much this continued trek about decision fatigue in retirement, but we're enjoying just as much the decision fatigue that hits Christians on a number of avenues. And with us in the studios to help us think through these difficult decisions sometimes, Mr. Bob Russell.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Bob.
Good to see you. Thank you.
And, okay, I don't even know if you're really retired. I want you to clarify brief history on what you did, obviously, and your church work that you're known for sure, but I don't know if you consider yourself retired. Give us a feel for what's going on in your life now.
Well, sometimes people will say retirement isn't in the Bible. And certainly the Bible says you'll be faithful unto death, and I'll give you the crown of life. But that retirement is in the Bible. In the book of Numbers, the 8th chapter, it says the priests were to retire from their main duties at age 50. That's probably in those days a little earlier than most of us. But the priesthood involved a lot of lifting animals for sacrifice. And so when they turned 50, the Lord said, now you can assist in the temple sacrifices, but you're no longer to be full-time at it. So when people say retirement isn't in the Bible, they're wrong. I watched preachers who stayed on too long, and they had an effective ministry, and then they hit a stage where they were just kind of stagnant and spinning their wheels, and then they became ineffective, and the whispers behind the scenes were, when's this guy going to step aside? And so I wanted to retire on top. I wanted to retire before people. I'd rather be.
You didn't want to hear those whispers, did you?
No, I want to walk out, not be carried out. And so I thought I need to set a date in advance and say, when I reach this date, I will be this age, and I think it will be time to retire. If you wait until you think you're ready, it's too late. If you wait till your friends tell you you're losing it, it's really too late. And so I made up my mind I would retire at a certain date 5 years down the road. And it was a non-emotional decision. And once I made that decision, I stuck with it. I didn't blank. And during that 5-year period, I found some of my energy waning for repeated tasks. I'd been at church when I retired 40 years. I said, the children of Israel put up with Moses for 40 years. That'd be long enough for these people to put up with me. I did like 5 fundraisers, and the last one I said, that's my last fundraiser. And then all of a sudden the guys on the board started talking about satellite ministry, and we're going to have to do another fundraiser. And I wasn't sure I had the energy to do it. You can only have so much energy so many times over before eventually it begins to wane. So it came time for me to retire that date. But during the last few years, I was thinking about what I was going to do in retirement, and I began to look forward to it. I think you ought to retire to something rather than retire from something. And by the time I retired, I had 4 or 5 ideas of what I wanted to do in retirement. I wanted to do Bible study videos. I wanted to travel and speak. I wanted to do retreats for young preachers. And I was anxious to experiment with these things to see which would be effective. So I look forward to it. And actually, Tony, when I retired, I stayed after the last service until the last person was stood in line to say thank you. And it was like 2:15 in the afternoon. And my wife and I walked to the car. Before I got in the car, we exchanged high fives and laughed, got in the car, and drove home.
Wow.
And I never looked back. I have never driven by Southeast Christian Church and thought, I wish I was the preacher there. When my associates and now their main preachers got up to preach, I never thought, I wish it's me. I was thankful it wasn't me, because I had another chapter in my life where it was meaningful. I see guys retire, they're going to play golf every day. And about 6 months later, they're looking for some volunteer work to do at the hospital or something because they're bored. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to retire to something and feel like our life still has a purpose. There's a change of pace. It's not as pressure-filled as it was before, but we still have a meaning and purpose in life.
And it sounds like, too, it would be good for anybody out there think about retirement, Christian, non-Christian. You're searching for what the meaning might be after retirement. But like you said, plan out a little bit ahead of what are you going to be doing. Now, what would you say to those people, Bob? And this might be a little out of your realm, but sometimes I'm having more and more people in. Let's say a company's been bought out. There's major changes going on, and they'll come into me and they'll say, Tony, this isn't the same company, but I'm 62 or 63. I feel like I need to retire. All of a sudden, this idea of retirement kind of comes on them all of a sudden. Any counsel you could give those folks?
Yeah, I think that needs to be something you plan for and you're not escaping from. We always think, there's an old saying about find something you love to do and you won't have to work another day in your life. Well, a lot of times people work because they need to provide for their family. My dad worked as a blue-collar worker in a factory for 40 years. That's the way he fed his family. And there are times that you have to go through an unpleasant experience at work for the timing to be right or for you to find something else. And just because you're not happy at your job, sometimes God uses our employment for our holiness, not our happiness. And it can be a pruning time, and we hang in there until the time to retire becomes obvious to us.
That is good stuff, Bob. We're running out of time. Let's see. I think we've got, I know at least one more, so you're going to have to hang around for another one. So, folks, we're going to continue this trek next week with Mr. Bob Russell. But between now and next week, you remember, you be worry-free. And if all else fails, let us know. We can try to help at Tony Walker Financial. Make it a good one.